This module will offer an in-depth look into how SIRE inspectors approach and respond to various vessel inspection questionnaires, or VIQs as we often call them. In this module, we will cover the following topics: SIRE 2.0 responses, hardware responses, process responses, human factor responses, negative responses. SIRE 2.0 responses. In SIRE, inspectors typically answered the questions with a straightforward yes or no, and added comments when the answer was no. The new SIRE 2.0 program brings some changes into this routine. Inspectors must now engage with questions encompassing three primary dimensions: hardware, process, and human factors. When we look at hardware questions, out of 385 questions in the SIRE 2.0 database, a whopping 228 have a hardware component. Within this category, inspectors will answer 10 questions with graduated responses and 218 with binary yes or no answers. So largely, expect binary responses for hardware components in each VIQ. Shifting gears to process-related questions. Out of 326 questions, inspectors will be offering graduated responses to a staggering 307 questions, reserving binary answers for just 19. So the lion's share of process-related questions will attract a more nuanced approach from the inspector. Now, what about human factors? Well, out of 385 questions, 300 incorporate human factors component. And you guessed it right. All 300 questions call for graduated responses from the inspector. But that's not all. SIRE 2.0 introduces a new layer of complexity. Whenever an inspector issues a negative response, they specify a subject of concern, or SOC, and a nature of concern, or NOC, chosen from a predefined list. Process response. Similarly, in the case of process responses, the inspector has to provide either a binary response or a graduated response. Binary response. 19 of the 326 process questions demand a binary response. If the inspector is satisfied with the procedures required in the VIQ, when reviewing the procedures in the SMS or the local procedures, the response would be as expected, procedure and/or document present. Suppose the inspector finds the procedure to be unsatisfactory, or the relevant procedures or records are missing. The inspector would respond as not as expected, procedure and/or document deficient. Graduated response. For the 307 process-related questions where a graduated response is expected, if the procedures are satisfactory and documents are present, the inspector records as expected procedure and/or documents present. When it comes to human factors, the subject of concern is the observed person, meaning a member of the ship's staff. Here, the inspector is not allowed to identify the name or the rank of the observed person. However, the crew is grouped into 5 categories, namely the senior deck officers, senior engineer officers, junior deck officers, junior engineer officers, and ratings. The inspector has to choose one of these categories as SOC for a human factors negative response. The nature of concern, in this case the PIF, as curated by OCIMF. Once the inspector identifies a subject of concern and nature of concern for a negative response to the hardware, process, or human factor aspects of the VIQ, the inspector will provide additional written content that provides comment or context to that negative response.